Thank you, Seth, and thank you all for joining us today. People receiving supports have made it clear that they want something other than traditional facility based group day program and workshop settings. People want opportunities for employment or meaningful and individualized services that are based in the community. And more than ever, service systems and organizations are responding to this and moving away from segregated facility based settings. So it's very important that we validate that transforming day supports from facility based to community based settings can be challenging. And we often hear questions such as, how do we support people with greater support needs? What do we do when the weather is bad? How do we respond to challenges related to staffing, funding, or transportation? How do we help to overcome all of the fears that are associated with any fundamental shift in the way that we provide services? At CQL, we work with organizations that truly want to improve the quality of people's lives and provide services that are more integrated and meaningful. We often collaborate and provide resources and suggestions on how to move forward, but there's no substitute for the perspective of those organizations that have successfully transitioned their services to community based settings. So, with that, I am excited to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. Troy Allen serves Director of Community Services in Memphis, Tennessee. He has been dedicated to disability services for over 30 years with a strong commitment to employment and inclusion. Angie Bendo is a supports and services manager at Empower Simcoe in Barrie, Ontario. She began her career as a direct support professional in 2002 and currently oversees 20 group living locations and community support services, which includes day services, employment, and transitions. Kim Martin is also a supports and services manager at Empower Simcoe. She started her career as a direct support professional 29 years ago and never looked back. She oversees 20 group living locations and the community support services program, which includes day services, transitions, and employment. Jenny Parisi is the Director of Services and Quality Enhancement at Community Living Oakville. Jenny supports various programs within CLO, including community participation supports, employment, and quality enhancement. With over 17 years of experience working in the sector, Jenny is committed to ensuring people receive quality services and supports that meet their individual needs. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being part of this project. And just real quick, before we dive into hearing from our panel, let's talk a little bit about the vision of CQL and how it relates to all of this. So, a world of dignity, opportunity, and community for all people within the context of day services. So, we believe that all people should be provided the opportunity for employment and meaningful day supports. We hope that all people are able to experience and then choose different service options. People deserve the opportunity to develop relationships and lives that are based in the community. Okay, so we'll dive in and we'll have a panel discussion and have the opportunity to share some of this perspective. So we'll start with the first question here. And Jenny, if you want to start with this one, what day services and supports were provided by your organization prior to this transformation?
Thanks, Michael. So prior to this, people attend what we consider our traditional day program. Everyone met in one main building. It's very segregated. People would attend Monday to Friday, 8 till 4. Whether or not they wanted to, they would be dropped off in the morning. And as much as we tried to get out during the day, we brought programs in-house. So instead of taking people to a community yoga program, we would instead bring a yoga instructor into the main building to offer services. That's kind of what our program looked like before. And our staffing ratio was 1 staff to 8 or 10 people. So it was very large groups, one building.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Troy, what did the services look like at SERVS prior to the transformation?
So at SERVS, we at one point were completely invested in workshop services. It was our premier service. It actually was the flagship service that started SERVS over 60 years ago. So we were very proud of our workshops. In fact, we had a network around West Tennessee of about 14 different locations where we provided contract work for people with disabilities to do the work and get the sub-minimum wage pay. And at one point, we were extremely proud of that because we really thought it was a progressive model. And we acknowledged that it was at one point, but we then started to see the handwriting on the wall. We started to hear from state governments around the changes that were coming. We started hearing about the HBS settings rule and how that would impact things. We heard about what was going on in Georgia with the Olmstead Act and all those things that came out of the transformation that we saw that was going to happen. And our goal at that point was to be part of the transition, not to wait to be impacted by, not to watch and see what happens, but to be on the front lines, helping make these changes happen because we were committed to providing the best possible services to people with disabilities that we could. And we realized at that point, and this was back in like 2014, we realized that segregated services were no longer the acceptable model. And we started making changes then, and we closed 2 massive workshops that we have in the city. We closed our Day Center, which had about 120 people in it at one point, and we stopped doing business with those satellite locations around West Tennessee. So once we committed to community employment and engagement, inclusion, we set a transition date, and in June of 2015, we closed all segregated services and went to community models across the board.
Oh, congratulations on that. Angie and Kim, what did services look like at Empower Simcoe?
Thanks, Michael. Ours is a very similar story, I think, to Jenny's. We were day to day, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Everyone dropped off at the same site, and from there went out to wherever their activity was in the community. But like Jenny said, we had numerous people that chose not to leave the building. And so we had to ensure there was staffing for those people. A lot of people just wandering hallways and not doing anything meaningful. So it's been a real shift for us to be out of the community. And just to speak to workshops, Empower Simcoe closed their workshops in 1993 and started a very robust employment program. So, and that employment continues to this day. The program, no one receiving less than minimum wage.
So it sounds like you all had very traditional models of service based out of buildings. Some people left, some people not so much. And Angie and Kim, we'll go back to you for this first one. What do your services look like now?
Thanks, Michael. So our services now are completely community-based. We are, our everyday activities are based around what people want. So they're goal-orientated. We speak to the people that are coming into services and determine what works for them. We also are part of, we are also doing a calendar for everyone. So what we do is we set out a variety of activities, volunteer opportunities in the community, and have that sent to all of our participants in order for them to have a kind of a trial and error model so that they can make decisions on what they want to try. And from there, we get to know their true interests and what they want to continue with and what they would like to change as well.
A little education experience and exposure there. Nice. Troy, what about you? What do services look like now at SERVS?
Well, as I said, we completely converted over to community-based services in 2015. And although we were supported employment providers for many, many years, decades even, we never focused on it. That was never a primary goal for us. So we have completely adopted an employment first model, which means that each person that comes into services with our organization, one of the first things we talk about is the benefits of work and how that can help them enhance their lives and meet their goals. So we want that to be on the forefront of their thinking, because we know that all people can work, all people have value. It's up to us as the professionals to find the right fit, the right job, the right accommodations, all those things so that they can be successful. So when we start talking about employment at the very beginning, it sometimes shifts the mindset of the families or of the person that, maybe we want to know more about that. Other than that, we also created a community outreach service where we do a lot of different things in terms of volunteerism. Then we have art access passes throughout the city so that anyone receiving services from our organization can access any museum, pretty much any of the fire museums, the actual museum itself, the zoo. We have a lot of free things that we have in the city and in the area. So people who want to volunteer are doing exactly that. We have a young lady who reads to seniors at the hospital who are, in pretty bad shape or in the ER, and she just brings comfort. Her brother is actually a Catholic preacher, minister, yeah, and so she's very, very religious. So she enjoys doing that. We've gotten great responses. We have people who are going out. We have folks who want to clean the parks. We have people who want to just go out and go to the mall. So the way we basically do it is we have one central meeting place here at our main location. People come in and then they go right back out in groups of 3. And we also eliminated the idea of a schedule. So no one has to say in advance, I want to do this 2 weeks from now, a week from now. They get to choose that morning. So we have staff who are cross-trained so that on any given day, a mix of people can go where they'd like to go without it being something that's locked in on a schedule. They get daily choices. The staff are ready to go. So they come in and within 30 minutes, they're back out in the community, enjoying their day. And typically that's 6 hours in the community. And we also have, safe places in the event of bad weather. I heard that came up earlier. In the event of bad weather, we have some relationships with churches and community centers around the city where people can go and be safe. And that really gives families a sense of security when we tell them they're not just out there. We have friends in the community. We have a network of partners. So that helps alleviate some of the concerns. And we can continue to see people who were just doing community activities now interested in employment. So we talk about employment with them at least once a year and at their planning period. But throughout the year, we're also having our staff talk to them about the benefits of employment while they're in the community, because it changes lives. We know that. And we see continuous movement of people going from community-based day to actually going into employment services. So we're happy with that, proud of that. And that's our push here at SERVS.
Thanks, Troy. I really like what you said about the reliance on partnerships too. It sounds like that's something that's really important to make all of this work.
Absolutely.
And Jenny, what about you? What do services look like now?
So similar to Troy, we really changed our thought process from like a traditional day program to more a service that can access. So it's focused on what do people want to do? Who do they want to be with? When do they want to do it? So, we don't need to come to a program 5 days a week if that's not what we want to do. We also really worked on building community partnerships so that people have those natural supports in the community that they can go to. We got rid of we still have our main building, but that's not where everyone meets. They meet at community centers, they meet at the public transportation bus depots, GO stations, and they start their day at different locations. And then this is just to prevent falling into quote unquote old habits as well, right? Because people for many, many years always came to the building, came and stayed here, like Angie was saying, wandering the halls, not having that. So we've really focused on that. We really meet with each person to decide what they want to do. We research what's out there, but we also look at opportunities that maybe people haven't thought of. So, maybe no one's ever had an opportunity to go on a wine tour. So we'll schedule a wine tour, see who wants to join. They get to go try it. Sometimes it's a great activity and people want to go out and do it again. Other times it's not as successful and it's more of a learning opportunity, and it didn't work out. We also really focus on employment, similar to what Troy was saying. So we really work with people to find their employment goals. So we don't have a list of, here's a list of jobs to pick from, tell me which one looks the best to you. Instead, we work with each job seeker to determine what their skills are, what their interests are, and then find a job that matches them the best. And we work with people to have balance in their lives. So we have people who have employment and are working competitively, and still attending once in a while, like our day service opportunities. So we really try to have that work-life balance as well.
Thanks, Jenny. So we touched on this a little bit, and I think a lot of us probably understand some of the reasons why you would want to make this transformation, but I'm really interested in your perspective on this as well. And Jenny, we can start with you again. Why did you decide to transform your day services to more individualized, community-based settings?
So, I think similar to most people on this call, we've always aimed for community inclusion, but we also looked at, people seem happy. You know what? We do go out when people want to. Then when the pandemic hit and all those restrictions came into place, people were isolated. It really highlighted the lack of natural supports that we had supported people to develop. So people were home, they might connect with other people who attended the day program, but that was it. There was no community outreach. So we really started to look at how we had been doing a disservice to people. We hadn't really been supporting them to fulfill all those like natural supports, build those community partnerships. So as much as the pandemic was not a good thing as a worldwide thing, it really did change community living Oakville's perspective. And it made us really commit to, okay, we need to move away from this. We really need to look at how can we best support people to have meaningful lives, but also meaningful relationships. We saw some people, they went back, they were living with their families, they had no longer day programs, and it was 3 years before we even heard from them again because they didn't have the tools to have those relationships built. So that was what kind of pushed us forward into making that transformation.
Thanks, Jenny. Kim and Angie, why did you transform your day supports?
We have recognized just before 2017 that the congregate setting and the need to be based in a building just didn't make sense. And it wasn't the name of our program is Community Support Services. It wasn't an address where everybody came to one spot. So our strat plan from 2017 to 2021 spoke to transforming our day services to be more inclusive, more community-based with flex hours and days. We wanted to empower people to lead full inclusive lives. And we knew coming to an address every day at 8:30, Monday to Friday, and potentially staying in that building all day didn't speak to our vision for our strategic plan. So like Jenny said, we took the pandemic as an opportunity to make that change. We knew it was coming and it was going to be kind of a slow, soft shift. But when the pandemic hit and we were actually shut down, we realized we couldn't open back up and have everyone coming to this building where they hadn't been now for, more than a year and a half. It would be confusing and upsetting for people to come back and then, perhaps a year from now say, we're closing the building. So that was our opportunity to move forward. And we keep telling everyone, and it's been our motto, I think from the beginning, a program is not a building. And we are the community, everyone's part of the community, and that's the route we took. And we wanted our services to strengthen the philosophy of community and that everyone belongs in the community.
I really like that. A program is not a building. Thank you for that. And Troy, I know you touched on this earlier, some of the whys. And anything else to add regarding the why?
Well, one thing I didn't mention was initially, back in like the end of 2013, we were contacted by our state IDD agency, and they asked us to take part in a pilot initiative where we would agree to transition a small number of people out of our workshop and into the community. And we then agreed to do it, and we created a steering committee around how we might want to approach this. And what we found out and really surprised us was once we started the process of moving people from the workshop into community settings and employment, that it generated all of this energy and excitement. So we decided to put together kind of a fun campaign around what it means to go out and get a job as opposed to be in the workshop or in the facility all day. We created some things like we had our wall of fame. And I'm proud of that because there was so much fun around the wall of fame. So everyone who went to work, we had a big picture of them hanging on the wall leading to our workshop. And everyone in the workshop wanted to be on that wall. In order to get on the wall, they had to be open to going to work. So that wall of fame turned out to be such a motivator of the people receiving our services that said, hey, I want to try something different. And then they influenced their families about trying something different, because I'm sure we all know sometimes the family is the barrier and they have good intentions. They just, they have a preset mind in terms of what they think their loved one can do. So when they started approaching their families about, hey, I want to try that thing, I want to try working somewhere, and it really caught fire. And we initially, when we started the pilot campaign with our IDD agency, we had about 120 people in our workshop. And within a short period of time, 60 of those, half of those people were engaged in community-based employment. And once we closed the workshop, the rest were involved in some type of community-based activity. And we never looked back. And one of the things we talk about is maybe, I think it was a year after we closed our workshop in our facilities, we did a survey with the families to see how they felt about what was going on. And although there were some who said, I'd like to see Johnny do more of this or that, not one of them said, we'd like to see him go back to the workshop. For us, that was validation that we were moving in the right direction. We were energized by that, and we just never looked back.
That's really great. And I really like how you celebrated people's success as a way to sustain that momentum. I think that's really important. Thank you, Troy.
Yes.
Troy, we'll start with you again on the next one, and just real quick, more regarding the why. Why we should do this. We all know there's challenges involved here, but again, a little bit about the why. And if you know CQL, you know that we love data. We do a lot of research, and what our research consistently tells us is that people who are in employment, community-based settings consistently have a higher quality of life than people who are in segregated settings. So this is personal outcome measures data that we've collected. And again, just in a nutshell here, people who are receiving their services in those integrated settings have a higher quality of life overall. So the research really bears that out for us as well.
Yes.
All right. So Troy, back to you. What challenges did you encounter along this journey?
Well, there were quite a few. So one of which was, and I mentioned earlier, mindsets. We had to start addressing the concerns of people who were really afraid of what it meant to leave the four walls every day and be in the community. So we started by having a series of meetings with the people we support, with our staff, and with the families to address those concerns. Because if we allowed those concerns to be unaddressed or leave them unaddressed, then they were going to fester. So we wanted everyone to come to us, tell us what you're concerned about. And then we created kind of a campaign around those concerns. How do we address them? How do we alleviate? How do we give parents some resources to understand better what's about to happen? So that was a big part of our push. We scheduled those meetings. They were very intentional. We had an agenda to make sure we were covering those concerns, and so that all families could hear the resolution. The bigger issue was funding. And you can't really just ignore the fact that it takes money to do pretty much anything. So we were able to build a campaign that allowed us to approach funders about this transformation we're making in the world of people with disabilities, moving from limited access into full integration. And when we started telling the story about how impactful this will be, how it will change people's lives, how it will take folks from being dependent on taxpayer dollars to contributing to the tax base, when we started telling our story and we went everywhere and talked to everyone, we raised just shy of $1 million. And that $1 million funded us to buy about 25 new vehicles. We bought tablets. So it took those resources to be able to convert from facility to community. And those grant dollars, actually, I think 3 different grants totaling about $950,000 allowed us to do that. And so I tell people, remember, we have a really compelling story. When we're telling people about how we want to make people's lives better, how we're taking them from this marginalized setting to this fully integrated setting, we're giving them the same opportunities you and I have. We're helping to meet their dreams and goals and outcomes. So when we tell that story, people responded really well, and we told it consistently, and it paid off. And it still is a powerful story because we are changing lives every day.
Thanks, Troy. Kim, Angie, any challenges?
Just a few, Michael, yes. So similar to Troy, a lot of resistance to change. As we know, change is hard. So we heard a lot from families at the beginning that it wasn't going to work, that they like things the way they are, that they need the ability to have their loved one 5 days a week in the program. So those were definitely challenges. Another one as well was buy-in with staff. So ensuring that staff were clear on the communication, because obviously they are the ones having those everyday conversations with families. So ensuring that questions were answered and having that buy-in from staff was critical. We also talked about moving away from the transportation piece for Empower Simcoe and providing transportation to and from activities, and looked at more of a skill building and educating and doing skill building with bus training and other methods that way. So that was a challenge, and we were able to work through that piece as well. The other piece is resources for the community. So how we talked about, when we go from being partially into the community to our pre-model and fully engaged in the community, we need to make those partnerships. So looking at partnerships for Empower Simcoe, we have day services in 2 different cities. So Barrie, which is a very big city with a lot of fruitful things, but also Aurelia. So the challenge there was a big one to try to find out where we could go locally in small communities that would provide that opportunity of connecting with that community as well. So that was a challenge. The other piece is just making sure that families were hearing the messaging. So we have a lot of families who are aging families who don't have technology. So looking at different ways of communicating the information, touching base with phone calls, that piece was a challenge. We thought we had communicated well and learned very quickly that we did not communicate well. So then again, having to pivot and change that piece. We had to be intentional on being transparent, which will be spoke on the next piece of it, but and making sure we were available whenever families needed us. So one of the challenges was that at the beginning, the conversations weren't as welcomed, even though they were offered. So that was a challenge in trying to engage the families to understand that we want to have these conversations and we want to talk through this and be able to look at the challenges that you individually are facing and how we can work through those.
Thank you. And thank you
one
for
thing, Michael.
go ahead, Troy.
Actually, she hit it perfectly, but I think it's worthy of maybe a little follow-up, and that is how important it is to have the staff on board, because the staff can put a monkey wrench in everything you're trying to do. They can shoot it down with the people we support and with the families, and you are then going to have a truly uphill battle. So one of the things we did was assure our staff. We met with them and said, we assure you there's a position for you. We're changing our model, but we're not getting rid of anyone. And we explained to them how this was going to look. So I just want to emphasize that, because I'm sure we all know if the staff is against it, we're going to have a much tougher time getting things accomplished.
Thanks, Troy. Yeah, that's definitely worth emphasizing again. So thank you for that. And Angie, thank you for bringing up that, how you're doing this in both urban settings and rural settings, because, organizations are rural, they're urban, they're in between. So that's very important as well. Thank you so much. And Jenny, what about you? Any challenges along the way?
No, it went smoothly. No. And I just want to echo Angie's stressing the intentional transparency. Similar, we thought we had great communication with families, with people supported, staff, and we quickly were told that clear communication wasn't actually as clear as we thought. So some of the challenges we had was getting the buy-in, the support, excitement about it. People are afraid of change, and a lot of times people were asking us like, oh, but Squizzo seemed really happy with the way things were. Why are we changing it? Why change what's not? What is it? Why fix what's not broken is kind of a lot of the mentality we had. Interestingly enough, people that were the quickest to buy in were the people we were supporting. They were the ones that were quicker to be like, yes, you know what? I would like to try this. There was challenges of, oh, what do you mean I'm not going to have a locker? And what, that's my corner and that's where I read my book. And, but they were the first ones to really buy in. And similar to what Troy said, staff struggled with the idea. I think it was scary. It felt uncertain. They weren't sure where that left them. Transportation was a very big challenge for us. So even though we're in Oakville, our public transportation system isn't necessarily the most accessible, easy to navigate. So we've kind of done a blended model. So for people who are more independent, who are able to access transportation, we've added that life skill component. We're going to meet at the GO train station. We're going to learn what it's like to take a GO train. We're going to teach those skills. But we have other people where taking that public transportation is just not as feasible, in which case we still have our, and I hate saying it, agency vans, the agency vehicles. We're trying to move away from it, but it's right now still a challenge. That continues to be a challenge because transportation is not always the easiest. And as people with support age and their physical needs become a little bit greater, we need to learn how to move forward with that. Another challenge of ours was, it's great that we're moving everything into the community, but how do people we support afford this? So in Ontario, people receive passport funding, which is funding for community supports. However, it's very limited. So we really relied on our community partnerships to look at, like, can we get discounts? Can we get deals? But still doing it in a way that didn't put people with developmental disabilities in a light of, oh, look at them, poor them, we need to let them in for free. So it's a really big balancing act with community partnerships, with making sure we can get a deal. We also really focused on grant writing, looking at external funding sources. This also continues to be a challenge. It's like a puzzle trying to figure out, okay, if you want to do this, but it's also a good learning opportunity for people who support. You have this much money. You've said you wanted to do A, B, C, and D, just like any of us. How do we budget and prioritize? And then the last thing we had to struggle with was community education. So when I started in the sector till now, community has come a long way with inclusion and everything. But up until now, we had people participating in aggregated programming. So public attitudes hadn't had the opportunity to catch up with our idea of inclusion. So that was a barrier. I feel like that's probably been one of the things we've overcome the best, is like, we're now seeing community partners, people we support are the best advocates and speakers for what it means to be inclusive. But that was a challenge initially, right? Because everyone were locked in a building, they would see groups once in a while, but they didn't have that full community inclusion. So those were some of the challenges that we experienced and continue to experience.
Thanks, Jenny. And so you all tell your story though, right? And I know that about your organization, you're really good at kind of telling that story, and so those public perceptions around disability. And I know you all use a lot of social media and various channels, YouTube, right? So always kind of sharing that story, and I think that's really great about your organization. Um, so we talked a little bit about this how, and I'll just throw it out to the group at large. Anything else to add about how you overcame some of those challenges along that journey?
For us, similar to everyone else, having information sessions, focus groups, starting with the people for telling a family member, I've spoken to Bob and Bob has said he really wants to do that, has a lot more leeway than, oh, I haven't spoken to Bob, but we're thinking of changing A, B, C. And for us, the rollout wasn't an all or nothing right away. It was a slow process. We started people who had bought into it a little bit quicker. And we started with that rollout to show the success. We, like you said, Michael, we're very big on social media. We started to publicize like, hey, look at all these opportunities that are happening. So from the start till the finish of actually like going out was probably 6 to 8 months for us. But I think starting small is what helped us. And then I think with community education, similar to what I said, is having the people we support be the advocates, but also we've really tried to empower our staff. We've tried to give them resources and tools to be ambassadors and to really educate as they see things happening. So yeah, so similar to like all those information sessions, focus groups, all stakeholders, those are some of the things we've done.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think I would just add there, again, with the staff and ensuring the buy-in is we really encouraged our staff to think outside the box and to get creative. And, you know, when a family is saying this isn't going to work for their child, breaking it down with that family individually and really focusing on the individual support plan for that person and what they want to do. And I think for that, many staff were energized by that. And some of the ideas they've come up with, you know, the first time they said they were going to Toronto and they weren't going to be using an agency van, we both were like, well, how are you getting there? We're taking the GO train. And many people we supported, that was just enough, was to go on that GO train was an experience of a lifetime. They had never experienced that. And now, I mean, they're going down to Blue Jay games on a routine basis, or, you know, going to the museum. So it's just ensuring that everyone's experiencing something that perhaps they haven't experienced before, and that would include our staff. So, but again, I think the messaging, we changed our messaging constantly, and we were always available for feedback. And we want to hear from our families what they feel is working and what's not. And yeah, it's just making sure everyone is heard.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add just a couple things, if I could. One of which is, for us, we talk about here at SERVS, when we were initially talking about transformation, it was a conversation. There were some things we were looking at doing, and we were taking a very strategic approach to how we wanted to transform. But it was what we call our tipping point, is when we changed it from just a concept to goals. We set actual goals. Because in our industry, we're used to, you know, outcomes and action steps and goals. So it made sense. So when we started changing our thinking, instead of just looking at what could be, we started saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to move forward. So that positivity changed the mindsets of everyone involved, because now this is something we were collectively working toward to make it happen for the betterment of all. And that really was a tipping point for us. And to a point that was made earlier, one of the things I found out when I started researching what social capital was available, what resources were in the community, and I had assumed for all the years that I've been in this industry that people with disabilities who came to the day center, and they left the day center, they went home and they had normal life like us. They were doing things. And well, when we started to really look into it and talk to folks and do person-centered planning, we started to find out that most of them went home and went to the back room and watched television the rest of the day. They didn't have a rich community life. They didn't have those experiences. So when we started introducing those things and giving them access, they became excited. And again, that was major tipping point for us. I just want to make those points, but yeah, those things work for us.
And Troy, I think that's a great point that, this is not just about day services, right? It's how do relationships happen? And Jenny, you mentioned this earlier, that lack of natural support, the lack of connections that are outside of services, for a lot of people, they simply don't exist. So it's about day services, it's about employment, but it's such a bigger conversation than just this. So thank you for mentioning that. Okay. And so Angie and Kim, let's start with you on this one. How do you customize your day services to ensure that they are meaningful for all people, including those who require a greater amount of supports?
Mhm. Thanks, Michael. So we customize by putting the person first. So we focus on the person. So we are asking each individual, what do they want to do? And further to the conversation we just had, who do you want to do it with? Is there somebody that you have a connection with that you would like that person to see if they would like to join you in that activity, for example, to create those networks and those friendships. We also have an individualized support plan that focuses on the individual, and we work with that person to create goals. So their goals based on what they want to do, and we make sure that there is progress with those goals. We follow up regularly to ensure that those are being reached, or do they need to be changed again around that person? Do you still want to do this? Regular conversations. Is there something different that you want to do? You're not enjoying it. If we don't touch base, we won't know that information. The other piece is for the people who have more intensive supports. We have more intensive plans for those people. So making sure that they're very, very clear as to how to support those people and what they need in terms of support to be successful, to have a meaningful day. And at times there's smaller groups of people, perhaps additional staffing is required. We customize it that way.
So I'm just going to butt in here. So
Yeah.
our typical ratio would be 3-to-1. That is what our funder does provide for us. But there are some people that we could maybe have a group of 4 or 5, and that support works well. So we just shift our funding model for maybe someone that needs a bit more intense or 1-to-1 support. So it's about being flexible in our supports.
And I know your organization supports all kinds of people, people who have behavior support, people who have personal care needs, and you're able to do that for them as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, the personal care support has been, I think, our biggest challenge out in the community. There's no lift systems typically in a public washroom, and perhaps a change table is required. So it's working with that family to figure out the best way to support that person. And maybe they have a bit of a shortened day. And we're providing our supports, we're thinking outside the box once again, but it is a challenge because not all community settings support someone that perhaps uses a wheelchair and a lift system.
Jenny?
So we were very fortunate, and we received a grant, and we were able to hire community liaison manager. So this manager, so we have the manager that sees the operations of our community programs, but this manager specifically is about getting to know each person, attending service, listening. I think that's the biggest thing. I think sometimes we ask questions already in a way that we think, because we think we know the answer. So she's meets with them formally in groups, informally in conversations to really get to know them, know what they want to do, and try to find things out in the community that meet those wants, needs, goals, all of that. We also had, and she's also very good at, hey, this person should have a little bit of an interest in this. Let's think outside the box. Let's really, try something completely different. We also had a lot of people, not a lot, but a handful of people who had said, I don't want to do anything. I'm over 65, I'm 70. I just want to stay home. I want to sleep in. I want to have my tea when I have my tea. So we really had to customize how does that work. Funding continues to be a challenge, and we've had to become very creative in how we continue with the funding that we have to make sure that those needs are met. So the people who have said to us, like, no, I'm done. I don't want to go to a workshop anymore. I don't want to be there. We've really worked really hard to customize so that their day looks to what they want to do. And it might be sleeping in, it might be, you know what, I just want to go out in the morning and I want to come home at lunch and that's it. So we've really worked at looking at who people want to spend their time with, but also when do they want to go? Because traditionally there wasn't much choice. You went 5 days a week, that's what was expected, that's where staffing was. And so now it's really been looking and listening to each person and also looking at trends and patterns. So, you know, this person says they want to do A, B, C, but they really don't seem happy. Let's try to give them another option. If they've never tried another option, they can't make that informed decision as to what they actually want. So it's really customizing, like kind of pushing people out of their comfort zones so that they can make an informed decision as to like, this is what that actually looks like. Maybe I don't want to stay home. I thought I did, I don't, or I want to stay home 2 days a week. So that's kind of what we've done. We've really worked hard to like listen to each person and then also kind of push them outside their boundaries so they can make that informed decision.
Thanks, Jenny. And Troy, I know from having visited your organization, you all do quite a bit of planning to support people with greater support needs as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I would say, just to be fully transparent, that our process evolved over time. So when we initially closed our day centers and workshops, we were into the whole concept of a calendar. We'd have like a monthly calendar based on what people said they'd like to do. And they were kind of locked in that we're going to do this day, this the next day, and so forth and so on. And over the course of time and through some of those surveys I mentioned that we did, we found out that people wanted daily choices. They didn't want to be locked in to say, I want to go to the zoo 3 weeks from now. They didn't want to be locked in that way. So we were then kind of forced in a good way to start rethinking how these person-centered services needed to look. And what we basically came up with was, we have a list of things that people are interested in based on their ISPs and their goals and outcomes. And we bring folks together because I heard mentioned earlier about the importance of friendships, maintaining those friendships that they developed over the course of years that they've been in our day programs. So when they come together in the morning, they can decide that day what they want to do. And that was a game changer for us because we weren't reliant on those schedules. But then we do, of course, have people who have greater support needs. And we have been blessed in terms of having local community centers that have invested in adult changing tables because of our presence and understanding how important integration is and how they want us to be a part of what they're doing. We also had the same situation with a church. They invested in an adult changing table because they value the work we're doing. And these are all some of our community partners that help in various ways based on what they can do to support us in our mission. And basically it took a campaign of going out and educating the community around what was happening, what needed to happen, and then seeing what they could do to support us. And we were surprised by the overwhelming support that we received from our community partners, and it made all the difference in the world. Another thing that we do with people with those greater support needs is you have to kind of think that through, right? So one of the reasons we have a small group that comes to our headquarters is because we know first thing in the morning after they've gotten off of the paratransit bus, they might need some personal care. And then we go out into the community. But in those particular cases, we plan that whether or not they might need to come back here, or they might need to go to one of those community centers or churches in the event that they need additional personal care. So that's kind of part of the thought process, but they get to choose each day what they want to do. And we have a few stops along the way while we're out that have accommodated us so that we have what we need to take care of those personal care issues that may arise on short notice.
Thanks, Troy. And thanks again for more emphasis on the partnerships too. And I think, you know, that message is pretty clear. As organizations, we cannot do it alone, right? We really need to look to our communities. That's great. Okay, thanks everybody. And so I know you all mentioned a little bit about this, and anything else to add about that communication piece? I think, you know, of course, critically important here that we involve stakeholders, people, families, staff members. Does anybody have anything else to add about that engagement piece?
I can say at Empower Simcoe, we're always seeking feedback. We want to know, how is it going? And is there something we're missing? Is there something we haven't tried? And I know that currently right now we're meeting with the city of Barrie in their recreation department to talk about how that our partnership with them, it's not just about buying passes. We would like to, expand it. And like Troy said, to assist with the personal care piece and having the city prepared to support people of all abilities. So it's that constant reaching out to others. Sorry, Jenny, I feel like I cut you off there.
No, not at all. I was going to say the same. We were very fortunate with our partnership with the town of Oakville. We have someone who requires a special mechanism when it comes to changing, and they were coming back to the office, but the office was kind of out of the way and it was just impeding. We've actually worked out a partnership kind of recognized, hey, we're not actually fully inclusive. So yes, you can store that mechanism here. We'll make sure it's in space, and when needed, this is where you get it. I think communicating, and we've talked a lot about this, like the focus group information sessions back. It's also knowing the audience. So we have some older families. So doing a Survey Monkey, which we tried the first year, wasn't successful. Sending emails wasn't successful. It was COVID was still a concern. Having them come in wasn't. We actually had a whole bunch of volunteers come in and individually phone each family to get someone online to ask those questions and letting them know it's anonymous so they could speak freely. Because I think sometimes some people don't want to be that squeaky wheel, or they don't want to say things that aren't working. So it's really important to navigate different tools of communication. And I think the social media and sharing those positive experiences has made a huge difference at Community Living Oakville. People hearing directly from someone who went to the Jays game, went on a wine tour, went horseback riding for the first time, hearing directly from them has way more impact than me trying to share that story or anything like that.
Thank you. And I really like how the collaboration, those community partnerships that you've built are making community settings more accessible for all people, right? Not just people you support, but the city of Barrie, if those facilities have that equipment, then other people will be able to access it too. It's really great. Troy, anything else about engaging stakeholders?
Oh, everything that has been said is absolutely accurate. One of the things that we did that might have been a little more intentional and for us it was beneficial, and that is we have a public relations team here at SERVS, and part of our campaign when we had our stakeholder group in terms of moving forward from facility to community-based services is that we looked for every possible opportunity that we could get free media attention. And we took advantage of that. We went to, I think I was on maybe 5 different morning shows with people we support talking about their lives and how they have changed their lives, or how they want to go to work, they have a passion. So we use those opportunities to our advantage. And again, we didn't pay for any of it. We even got a free billboard for a couple months, just making people aware of the fact that we had a group of folks who want to work, and we never emphasize the disability. We talk about, with the employers about what accommodations may be necessary. But the message here is use as much free stuff as you can. I heard social media, and that's great. There's so much stuff out there because our message, again, as I said earlier, is so passionate and so powerful.
Thank you, Troy.
Yes.
All right. So any other suggestions or advice for other organizations that are considering a transition of their facility-based day service programs? No, I'll throw this out there, group at large.
Yeah, I would say try and partner with someone who's been through it, like the people on this call today, because sometimes you just need a different perspective in order to move forward. Sometimes these things may seem insurmountable, but someone who's broken it down step by step, who's been through the process, can help you reimagine what your services will look like. Because what I found is that while I was keeping people in a workshop all day, I was cut off to society as well. I didn't know what was going on out there. So it took me taking time and going out and looking and educating myself to know what the community had to offer. Then we started thinking about how do we make this transition. So I just think it would have been easier for us if I had someone who'd been through it in order to help me, because we had to kind of recreate our own wheel. So I would encourage you to reach out to the people on this call who all seem very knowledgeable. And I think that'll help save some of the bumps and bruises that we had to deal with along the way.
Appreciate that, Troy.
And
In
I would
addition-
say, oh, sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
you go
Angie.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the one advice I'd have is it's going to be a challenge. It's going to continue to be a challenge. There's going to be a lot of barriers that present. But if this is the path that you're choosing, commit to it. Because so we had made a commitment at Community Living Oakville. We are not going back to the way things are. So whenever a barrier came up or someone was expressing concerns of how they'd like to go back to the way things were, we had made a commitment that wasn't going to happen. So we had to problem solve through each of those barriers instead of saying, you know what, this is getting pretty hard. Yeah, let's just go back. So I would say if this is the path, really commit to it, then what choice? Reach out to other partners. You know, I think we're all pretty open and transparent of what the challenges were. And depending which region, there might be specific things that are Canadian wide that maybe the American agency can handle it or vice versa. So really reach out to those agencies.
But you're doing community-based day services even in the winter, right?
Even in the
when it's
snow,
cold.
we had what we called the snowmageddon, and we were still full force.
So
Angie,
Jenny, I think you spoke to most of what I was going to say, so that's great. The holding firm part, right, is very important. But I think even before that is the listening, the active listening, really acknowledging that families are worried about what this looks like at the beginning. Staff are also, and acknowledging and having them have that time to share how they're feeling is, I think, the most important piece in the beginning, to be able to acknowledge that you hear how they're feeling and how can we move forward together, is what I wanted to add as well.
that's great. Yeah, just validating some of those concerns, right? And I know that some of these day programs have been around for many, many years, and change is hard. It is. So definitely want to validate all of those anxieties and fears for sure. Thank you for that. Okay, great. Well, so we do have a number of questions that have come in here, and I know I've been taking a peek here and seeing what was coming in, and I know that we've addressed quite a few of them, but there are some more that we've maybe touched on a bit or haven't quite touched on yet. So let's see. Okay, so we talked about personal care. Thank you for that question. And I know some of you touched a little bit on this, but Sarah asks, can someone go into detail about what a typical week looks like in the community? What specific activities people are participating in, and a little bit more about the transportation piece, utilizing the metro, buses, Lyft, Uber, etc. Anyone want to answer that one?
I can, sorry for Empower Simcoe. We have a calendar of activities that people sign up for. And typically they're based on what we know individuals are looking for. It's from those conversations. For example, a class, we may have a cooking class if somebody's looking to build up their skills, which would involve budgeting as well. They would be given the address of where that activity is taking place. And if they're able to take the bus or public transit on their own, then that's great. If they're not, then we also provide staff to assist with learning the bus system. And it may be that the staff never leaves the bus, but is always present with them. And they may travel to the activity together via bus. But it is up to the person to get to the activity, whichever way works best for them.
Thank you. Other examples of what a typical week might look like and what that transportation might mean for people?
Well, what serves, it was pretty complicated in terms of our transportation because we use a lot of different sources. So of course, we have the Memphis Paratransit that brings people to and fro. And they are, they've been in place for a while, but they're not always really reliable. So we get that part and we deal with it. We will reimburse parents who are willing to bring their person to the activity or meet the staff in the community, and they can get paid for their time and expense to bring them and then go pick them up. We have some staff members who use their personal vehicles, and of course, we reimburse them for that. And then we have roughly 100 vehicles and serves, we're the largest organization in West Tennessee. So we have about 100 vehicles on the street every day. So we try and have a master schedule so that we can maximize the movement of people. So if we have someone that needs to get from A to B and we have a residential site that's there, and so those kinds of things are happening on a consistent basis to try and see if we can find ways to streamline our services and support one another. And so we get a lot of that going on. And then we have people who ride the mainline bus. So, and we'll pay for their bus tickets if they get a day service where transportation is included. So like I was saying, it's pretty complex at serves because we're in a big city, big area. We cover 7 counties in Tennessee and 3 in northern Mississippi. So we use a plethora of things to get people to and fro, including me as the director. If something breaks down and I can run by and pick up someone on the way and get them to where they need to go, we're all in, and that's the expectation of the team, and that's what we do.
And what I heard there, Troy, everything individualized you're using all of the available options and kind of individualizing it for each person.
Absolutely.
Great. Jenny, thoughts?
So I touched upon the transportation and how that continues to be a barrier. As much as we'd like to move away from agency vehicles, we still do rely on them for some of the people that attend our services. But for activities, I think beginning the question with some sample activities, it really does change based on what people have said. But I just pulled up a schedule for like what was planned for this week, and we have people yesterday would have gone to the Hockey Hall of Fame, done photography, done a mindfulness class. We go, like I've said, wine tours. We do Grand River cruise, so it's going on a boat where they have lunch served. We have people that have gone to the casino because they're interested in that, horseback riding. So it does really change. And our goal is that every time we introduce, so if people have a choice, they have 3 activities a day. I love Troy's idea that it comes in the morning and then people decide that day. We're not there yet. We're still working on a calendar where people have to schedule just for logistic purposes. But for every choices for like each day, we have something that costs money, but we always make sure that we have something that is free of charge, knowing that people we support are on limited budget. So we really try to provide a balance so people can really start to look at their budgets. I see this is coming up on Friday. I want to save my money for that. So I'm going to do this on Monday, stay home on Tuesday or whatever. So our activities are really based on people. And then each week we try to throw in something that's way out there for some people, and just to kind of give them that exposure. Because again, if you've never tried it, we had 2 people who said they were really interested in hot yoga. After 15 minutes, they were like, nope, I'm out. And that's okay, because now they know that they don't want to do hot yoga, and that's part of the experience, right?
Thank you. And we did have a question, and I think we've addressed this, asking about the level of support that people receive by your organizations. And I know I've worked with all 3 of your organizations, and please confirm, but you support people that need just a little bit of support, and you also support people that need 24/7 hands-on support as well. Is that right? And you're able to do this with everybody.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I tell you something that we have come to realize here at Serves, and that is, for many, many years, we were guilty of over supporting people, right? And we found out that we were creating dependencies that weren't necessary. And again, this was our institutional thinking, because we thought that if a person's in our services, they need everything they need. Well, when we started to realize we were over supporting people, we actually created an independence model where we have people who live at home without staff. Staff members just call and check on them or drop by if needed. So we are moving in that direction because, again, we over supported people because that was our mindset, that was our model. But now we are fully into person-centered integrated services and only give them the service they need to live a meaningful life in their community.
Sorry, Troy, just to add to that, I think I can speak for most of us in that the goal of the transformation of day service isn't that this just lives through life Monday to Friday. But if someone has attended a yoga class on Monday through the day program service, and then that same class is offered on Saturdays, they now have the tools how to get there. They learn the public transportation, they have the pass, and then they can go without staff, without other people, or they can go with who they're choosing. So that is really the goal, is to make sure it expands beyond that Monday to Friday 8 till 4 thing.
And one last thing on that, Michael, if you don't mind, and that is we in Tennessee started using managed care services for our employment and community first model. And what they're doing now, and it's a slow rollout, but each individual that comes to us through that ECF is getting a transportation budget that they can use how they see fit. And so we have people now using Uber and Lyft and the thing, or they can pay a family member to take them somewhere. So, and they get reimbursed. So that adding that as a service on their service plan gives them so much more independence, because now they're not locked into a day service or hours. They can go where they want, when they want, based on their level of comfort. So that, I think, is unique to not just Tennessee, but a few states. But I really hope to see that expand across the entire state and country, because it really makes a huge difference.
I think that's a great point, Troy. And yeah, for, just feedback in terms of the systems and how these services are created and how the funding models work in practically speaking, I think that's really great, right? So having more flexibility in terms of the types of transportation that you can use to access your community. Thank you for that. So we have an interesting question here. Do you all own your own facilities, and how did you repurpose the space that your day programs used to be in?
And Empower Simcoe, yes, we do own the building, but it's directly across from our head office. So our staff do come to the building at 8:30 to get supplies, information, do documentation before they head out to the community. They then may return. We still do some virtual activities, although we have really reduced that greatly, but we have a handful of people that are really still struggling with community, being in the community. They're afraid to come back to the community. So we are still providing support to them virtually. We are using our building now for other purposes. We have an early on center now in the backyard for children under the age of 5, not in school, that the Ministry of Education supports. So we're using our building for other reasons. We also have a snoozling room, which we are loaning out to the community as a fee for service. And yeah, we use it for special events because it is quite a large building.
Thank you. Jenny, any thoughts about what to do with all that space?
Yeah, so you've been, Michael, so our head office was the same area that we had our day programs. Right now, it's just either offices or just an empty space. So as an organization, we're in talks of how that's going to look moving forward. But we've developed great partnerships with community partners, with churches, with community centers. So that's where everyone is meeting. They're meeting at a local church or at the GO station or at a community center. So not that people aren't welcome to come to the office, but when they come, it's for a purpose, not kind of hang out here. So yeah, we have a really big building that's kind of sitting half empty.
Lots of potential, I'm sure. Troy, thoughts?
Yeah, so Michael's been here. We have a really large campus here in Memphis, and a huge building that even prior to the pandemic, we were only using a small portion of that building, of this building that I'm in now, actually. But about a month or so ago, along with our board of directors, we decided to put the building on the market because we don't believe there's going to be a need to return to segregated services ever. So this building is a drain on our resources. So we have put it on the market. We are now doing kind of a feasibility study around people who might want to either, we'll maybe get some rental space and have people kind of working a hybrid schedule that need to be in the office, and some of them working from home certain days, in the office certain days. So we didn't really find a need to repurpose the space because we have so much space and we just don't need it. So the bottom line is we're getting rid of this building. We're trying to cut our costs so that we can focus on providing quality services and supports.
Wow, congrats, Troy. And that feels so final, doesn't it? No going back now, right?
No going back, absolutely.
All right, thank you. So people are really interested in funding and grants. And any more to share about that, about how you are creative with your funding, what grants you've been able to access to make all of this work?
I can start. So I'm in Ontario, for those who aren't sure where Oakville is. So we have different sources of funding, which then reflects the different programming. So we do receive funding from our ministry. So that covers, or is supposed to cover, the cost of staffing to run this. For the activities, I think I mentioned earlier, we have something called passport funding in Ontario, where each person supported goes through a process, they fill out an application, and then they get a certain lump sum of money to use. And the goal of that money is for community participation activities. So we sometimes bill the person directly. And then we also focus on grants. We do write a lot of grants. United Way was a big partnership for us. That's how we were able to fund the community liaison manager to get this started. We do a lot of we try to apply for big grants, but we also focus on local grants that maybe are only 10, 15,000, but it still gives us that little bit of leeway. And then we also do have a fee for service program. So we do have a service where people pay per diem to attend, and then that covers the cost of that program. So we kind of have different multiple funders coming through. I think everyone can agree it's never enough, and we're having to be really creative. And sometimes it's, hey, you know what, we're going to have to make this ratio a little bit bigger just because that's the nature of the funding. So we're not at our ideal right now, but we're getting there.
And our funding is very similar to Jenny's, obviously being in Ontario as well. We have a target number of 364 people. And so we're funded for each of those people. We have a staffing budget. And as an agency, we have created a recreation line where we do put some funds in to pay for the staff passes that they require. And part of the piece of getting rid of our vans and not using them as much, although we're given funding to purchase a van, we're not given funding to maintain that van or fill it with gas. So as our fleet decreases, we won't be replacing it to help with our funding costs.
Thank you. And Troy, I know you all did a lot of development, outreach. Anything else to add about the funding and how you're able to make it work?
Well, one thing that I believe is important, and it can vary from state to state, is start by taking a look at your rates and your service definitions to see what, in fact, can be blended. Are there opportunities to blend services together? As in having, like with us, we have a person with managed care. There may be different guidelines in terms of someone who's in our waiver. So we had to look at those service definitions to see which services could be blended together so that we can look for savings and opportunities to combine. So that's something I would definitely encourage any provider to do. Also, we took a very aggressive approach because when we decided to close our workshop and our day centers, we wanted to make sure we were maximizing our opportunities to earn revenue in other ways. So we did become an employment network. We do have a contract with VR, with our IDD agency, with our managed care organizations, which we have 3. And so we are a ticket to work provider. So we look for all those opportunities to bring in additional revenue. And that was definitely helpful. And finally, in terms of grants, I'd say start with a good concept letter that explains what you're doing and why. And I think that can really open doors for you when you are approaching grantors.
Thank you, Troy. Another question about how to support people in rural areas. And Kim and Angie, I'll start with you on this one. If you have any other thoughts to share, and Troy, I know you have some people out in rural parts of the state, and Jenny, maybe not so much, but and any other thoughts on supporting people in the more rural areas?
It's hard. It is difficult, but it's, again, thinking outside the box. It doesn't necessarily mean that people have to come into the city center. There are events occurring on the outer edge of some of our towns, and staff they have to be out there investigating and searching for what works for each family. And we're very mindful, if somebody's coming into town for an activity, we have to make it worthwhile. It can't be an hour-long activity if they've had to drive 45 minutes to get there. So it's working with the family and the people we support to make sure it's the best use of everyone's time. But for sure, it's difficult.
And sometimes, just to add to what Kim said, there is activities that we have done that fit the goals of people that are in those rural towns, and we go to them and are in a community setting and do an activity there as well.
And it's important for us and for the people that we support that they are participating in their community. Yes. Doesn't mean it's just the 2, Aurelia and Barrie City. And it's being mindful of that. They need to learn their own community.
And staff have been really on board with that piece and investigating and looking for opportunities and suggesting them to the people that are involved to see if that's what they want to do. And we've done multiple activities like that.
Are you tapping into the expertise of staff that live in some of those more rural communities as well?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Troy, thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's important when you're dealing with rural areas to first kind of survey the area, survey the surrounding area, see what's there. Because you know, it may not look like it's a bustling economy, but there are probably small businesses there that are still providing services in that community. And if they're like the rest of us in the country, they're looking for workers. So there may be some opportunities there. So kind of surveying the area is a good start. And as I mentioned earlier, we are an employment first organization. We talk about employment at the very beginning. So when we go to rural areas, one of the things that we look at is the possibility of entrepreneurial ventures. So we found guys who, you know, they made a business out of raking leaves. So there's some opportunities there to be creative around what people can do to maybe start their own business or partner with a business that's already there, and find the activities that people in that community are already involved in.
Thank you. Here's an interesting question. Have you noticed any difference at all in staff turnover since these transitions?
I haven't. I don't know what it's like in the US, but I'm sure Kim and Angie, we're in a staffing crisis here where we're struggling to get staff, but the staff who have been with us, we haven't had much staff turnover. We have had more people interested who work in our supported living homes start to ask questions of like, oh, what does that look like in community participation support? So that sounds like fun. So we've had a few people transfer over into these services, but we're in a staffing crisis. So we haven't had a lot of new people come in per se, but I haven't noticed any staff turnover.
I would just say we saw retirements. I think that was what we saw, and it wasn't necessarily the transformation that caused that. It was the pandemic. and people rethinking their career choice, or it was time to say goodbye and to retire. But like Jenny said, right now we are crying for staff, and we also do see our group living staff moving over to the community participation side, because they're thrilled to go and do what the other people are doing in the community, and not to be, maybe providing that direct support in a group living setting. They want a change. I think it's people seeking change. It's not related to the transformation per se.
Thanks. Troy, did you notice that at all? Did it make a difference?
Yeah, I would say that, we have a pretty high turnover rate, but I don't think it was due to the transformation. It was like everyone else is saying, the pandemic, our whether or not we're competitive in our pay with what other jobs are offering. So all those things came into play. But overall, we're still struggling. We're trying to get staff, but the transformation piece didn't really affect us. But what we're doing right now, and this is very intentional, is that we're trying to tear down the walls between our community and day services and our residential services, because we have historically had this unwritten, antagonistic type relationship. Well, now we're combining all of that. So I'm over all of our adult services, whether it's residential or day, and we're trying to just blend those services, blend those staff, so that we can maximize every opportunity to provide quality services while we're still struggling to hire new people. So that's kind of our approach right now.
Thanks, Troy. And a very specific question here. Are staff members able to support people with medications during the day when they're out in the community? Yeah, okay. All right.
Yes, for us, it's a simple yes.
Great, okay. Let's see. And sort of specific questions about how specifically these activities are hosted, where they're hosted, and somebody gave an example of cooking. So if somebody has a cooking goal, where would you work on that activity? Are your organizations hosting those activities? Are you working with community partners? How do you address some of those specific goals that people have?
At Empower Simcoe, we have some relationships with some of the churches as well. We have a downtown drop-in center that is owned by another agency, and we rent space from those places and use their facilities. If it's a swim class or a gym class, we rely on the recreational staff from our city to provide that class, and we're just providing the support that an instructor, a paid instructor from whatever organization we've hooked up with would conduct the class, but we're providing the support for the person.
And same here at Community Living Oakville. Sorry, Michael. Nothing happens in the building. So we actually, a year before the pandemic, we had a family that generously donated the state-of-the-art kitchen. So pre-pandemic, we were doing cooking classes on site, and now that's not an option. Go out, we connect with local grocery stores. We try to really focus on participating in programs that already exist. So instead of it just being, oh, here's a group from Living Oakville, it's a program that everyone in that Oakville or surrounding area is already participating in, and we're just joining in, similar to what Kim's with support.
And the same for us here at SERVS. We don't create any opportunities here in the building. We participate. We partner with something that's already happening in the community. We may need to meet with the organizers in advance to kind of tell them a little bit about, our mission and how we will approach being part of their initiative. But nothing is happening here at SERVS in the building, nor do we coordinate anything independent of community engagement and involvement.
Thank you. And so probably one last question here. I didn't mention this. We did actually get 67 questions, and they're still coming in, and that might be a record. Obviously, I've tried to combine them where I can, but we're probably not going to be able to get to them all. We have a few about funding, billing, and have you had to make any changes in terms of how you were able to bill for services or have the services reimbursed by your funders, given the changes in the way that you provided the services. And somebody mentioned, Jenny, you mentioned the wine tours, and that wouldn't be billable in their state. So how do you make that work?
So I guess it would depend on where you live and what's billable, but for the most part, if it's not coming through a grant, the people we support are directly paying for the activities. Unfortunately, we're not funded as an agency to be able to pay for all these activities. And then people supported might use passport funding, or if they're working, they have their own bank accounts. But something like a wine tour, if it's an activity that's not billable to our passport program, then people are paying out of pocket for. And again, that's not the ideal, but unfortunately, that's the reality that we're in because we're not funded enough to supply those activities.
But in terms of having that be an allowable service under your funding, they're probably not. It's probably more of like a socialization goal, or maybe it's some other kind of goal related, and the wine tour is just kind of the vehicle to achieve
Yes.
that. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Okay, so it is just about 1:30 Eastern time here, and I want to thank all of our panelists once again, and we really appreciate your perspective. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in doing this transition and supporting people to have lives that are more based in communities. Thank you to all of our attendees today for all of the really great questions. I do apologize that we couldn't get to them all. And we had a question about can they reach out to you all for questions or to get some additional perspective. And I think you all had said yes. You may regret that. I'm thinking we did have a lot of questions today, a lot of interest. So I will put your contact info up on the screen. You all are very, very gracious to have agreed to that. And once again, I really appreciate you sharing your perspective. As Troy said, it sounded like something that could have helped you earlier on along that journey, is to be able to hear from others, have that support. So I think that brings a tremendous amount of value. So I got all of your contact info up on the screen. And thank you again for being part of this project. And Seth, I'll have you come back on to talk about all the other last minute details.
Yeah, again, thank you very much to our panelists for the excellent presentation today. I know the attendees enjoyed it, and Mike, I think you're right that this was a record-setting number of questions and attendee engagement. So that speaks to the quality of our presenters. Thank you. So again, we will be sending out a link to all registrants where you can access both a PDF version of the presentation slides and especially the webinar recording that'll be coming out in roughly 1 to 2 weeks. So we'll be sending that out. We will include all of the chat links that we sent out during the webinar, as well as contact information for the panelists. So that'll be included there. And then you'll want to be on the lookout for our upcoming capstone that will be going out later this month, which will feature all of the panelists that are here today, presenting kind of similar content, new information. So again, that'll be coming out in roughly 2 weeks, and we'll include some sign-up information for our e-newsletters in the webinar follow-up that we'll be sending out in 1 to 2 weeks. So that's, I believe, really all we have. And again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our panelists and Michael for facilitating. It was an excellent presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You all have a good rest of your day.